Mr. Durst is present with Mr. DeGuerin, Mr. Ray, and Mr. Chesnoff. We have Mr. Henderson and Mr. Bailey in the council table, Mr. Millius and Mr. Lewin. Our jurors and alternates have returned. Juror number 4 got your note. We'll take care of you, no problem. Glad to read your note. I'm glad to read you have some good news. Yes, very positive. All right. But yes, we'll take care of that. That's fine. Let's resume then the video.
Resuming the testimony of Jeanne Clarke at 49 minutes, 49 seconds, where we left off. It was about an hour and a half.
Fresh recollection about you specifically speaking to Mr. Durst about his spelling of Beverly.
Yeah.
Now, you were well aware when you were having that conversation, you had seen on the Jinx where Mr. Durst had admitted that he believed that Beverly was spelled B-E-V-E-R-L-E-Y, correct?
I probably didn't remember that specific thing. I don't recall every detail of every movie I see. So I would say no.
Ma'am, did you think it was an important detail?
No.
Ma'am, I haven't finished my question yet. You finish it, you can then answer. Did you think it was an important detail, ma'am, that Mr. Durst was confronted with a letter that had Beverly spelled wrong, and then was shown the cadaver note on TV and couldn't distinguish which one he had written and which one he hadn't? Did you consider that significant?
I don't think I was paying that much attention.
You weren't paying that much attention to whether or not the note that had been sent from the killer to the police department, and which Mr. Durst couldn't say if he wrote or didn't write in terms of writing, couldn't identify it. You weren't paying much attention to that?
No.
Ma'am, you're now aware when I say the cadaver note, you know what that is?
No.
You don't know what the cadaver note is?
No.
Put it up, please. What is it? Yes, sir.
Your Honor, we're putting up what has previously been marked as People's 24 in a previous condition event.
All right. Have you ever seen a depiction of that envelope before?
No.
You don't recall that envelope playing a significant role in the movie The Jinx?
No, I don't remember all of the movie.
By the way, does that look like anybody's writing that you know?
No.
Not at all?
No.
Does it look like Bob Durst writing?
It doesn't look like anybody I know.
So if Bob Durst were to tell you, were to say, you know what, that looks like my writing, would that be something you would disagree with?
That would be up to him.
Well, ma'am, you've corresponded with Mr. Durst on his writing. So
I did not correspond with him.
you've never corresponded with Mr. Durst ever?
No.
He's never sent you a letter?
No.
Are you sure about that, ma'am?
Yes.
So you're telling me that looking at this envelope, you didn't know anything about its significance until I can show it to you, until I can show it to you right now? Is that
No,
correct?
not really. I don't remember the details of the movie. The letter was in there, but I don't really.
We show, what's the, People's 25 now? You ever seen this depicted before on the Jinx?
I remember the letter on the Jinx. I do not remember that specific thing you have on the screen.
So you are not aware that this is a letter that was sent to the Beverly Hills Police Department that was postmarked before Susan Berman's body was found and gave her address and the
No, I don't remember the address or seeing the address in the movie.
Does what I just said, does that in any way refresh your recollection about?
No.
If I can finish, does that in any way refresh your recollection about the importance of this note?
No.
Do you remember now Mr. Durst being confronted, being shown this note, and being shown a letter that he had written to Susan Berman previously, which also had the Beverly misspelling in the same address. Do you recall that?
No,
Do you recall Mr. Durst saying in response that he could not tell which one he wrote and which one he didn't?
no, I don't remember discussing it at all with him.
Ma'am, did you ever speak to Mr. Feckheimer?
Yes.
That was that same conversation that you previously discussed with Mr. Durst when you talked about having spoken to Mr. Feckheimer, is that right?
Yes,
And when you spoke to Mr. Feckheimer, did Mr. Feckheimer ask you anything about the spelling of Beverly?
no,
Do you recall having a conversation with Mr. Durst about that?
no,
JC 006 52015 at 2023.
Your Honor, one of this is 129 and 129A.
Yeah.
One of your investigators visited me today, David Fetchheimer.
What's his name?
David Fetchheimer.
Way back when?
No, well, he is now working for Dick DeGuerin.
David Fetchheimer is?
Yes.
Huh. Now, I remember him way back when. I had no idea that Dick had hired him. When Dick said something to me.
He did,
He
tell
was in
you?
San Francisco, right?
He did, yes, right. But he flew down and
I grew up with them. I knew you back then. And I was hoping that you had some, letters or something like that.
right.
Where I spelled Beverly wrong.
But-
How you get me wrong?
No, he didn't even ask me about that at all. And he has a letter, and I looked him up on the internet, so I know who he is. And he has a letter from DeGuerin saying that he's assisting in your case.
First it's DeGuerin. DeGuerin.
Okay?
And so what did David ask you about?
He asked me how I met you.
He wants to see if you're a plot,
And I'm a what?
like a government too. What else did he ask you about?
He asked me how I met you, and I told him about the single gourmet.
Yeah, so you were never asked, to the best of your memory, anything about Beverly, how Mr. Durst spells it.
no,
Is that correct?
that is correct.
And ma'am, you were more than happy and more than willing to speak to Mr. Fetchheimer, correct?
Yes,
And you were willing to speak to him because you knew that he represented Bob Durst, correct?
yes,
Ma'am, one of the first questions I asked you was, do you consider yourself to be an unbiased witness with any motivation, any bias in this case? And your answer 2 weeks ago was, yes, you consider yourself an unbiased witness. Do you still hold that answer?
no, because I know Mr. Durst personally, so I don't believe I could be unbiased.
So ma'am, you would agree that not only are you not unbiased, you are here reluctantly under subpoena. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And ma'am, in fact, as you sit there, you are listening to every question I'm asking. You are thinking about before you answer how this is going to affect Mr. Durst. Is that correct?
No,
Ma'am, in your calls, you were aware that those calls were being recorded, correct?
yes,
And ma'am, isn't it true that you really on those calls tried to say very little? Is that correct?
no, that's not correct. It is not possible to have a good discussion when you're being recorded in the prison. They keep interrupting you, telling you how many seconds you have, and then they just cut you off in the middle of a sentence. So I think the only thing you accomplished is you just say hello to the person and visit, and I would never try to accomplish anything on a recorded conversation from a jail.
Well, ma'am, and that's why, in fact, you inquired of Mr. Durst. You wanted to make sure that they weren't reading his mail, correct? Now, you did inquire.
I did, but I don't know what my intention is, and I barely remember it. What are you asking?
Ma'am, you see your testimony that you have no idea, as you're sitting here, why you were asking Mr. Durst whether his mail was being monitored.
I was curious because it was my understanding that all mail is monitored.
And ma'am, you asked that question, correct, because you wanted to see if potentially, ma'am, you could send him something by mail that I would get to listen to. Isn't that correct, ma'am?
I would never do that. I would never send anything into the prison that I did not think would be public information.
But that's why you inquired of him, ma'am, whether it was being monitored or not, correct?
No, it's a statement. I'm sure he's not an idiot and he's familiar with the penal system and would not be writing things. And I would not through that system.
You made it very clear to Mr. Durst that you were not going to talk to me at all, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, you indicated to Mr. Durst that you don't have to talk to me.
I did not at that time. I think that's my right not to talk to you.
Because ma'am, I'm asking, did you say to Mr. Durst during one of your jail calls, you know what, I don't have to talk to the prosecutor in this case, and I'm not going to do it.
Yes.
Now, you agree that you wanted Mr. Durst to know that you were in no way cooperating with law enforcement in the prosecution in this case.
No.
5/30/15 at 17:57, clip JC009.
Okay.
David, what's your name?
Yeah, right, okay. So you were upset that your attorney didn't tell you? So, and then I wrote you that the Los Angeles detective called me, and I just said, I just told them I didn't care to talk to him, and then they said, is that because you're a friend of Robert Durst? And I said, I just don't have any comments.
Jeanne,
Yeah?
you just have to think about what you're saying, and then say it and ask Steve.
Okay.
LA detective, and then say whether you said LA.
He called me, and I said, I don't care to talk. And then he said, is that because you're a friend of Robert Durst? And I said, I have no comment. And he hung up.
So did you pass it on to David Lexington?
No, I passed it on to you in a letter. But you haven't gotten.
So could you pass it on to David Lexington?
I could, yes. If that's what I should do, yes.
Yes, please do that. No?
I will.
Ma'am, does that refresh your memory about you, in fact, having sent letters to Mr. Durst? You said before you
yes.
didn't send him any letter.
I said probably two or one.
Okay.
I mean, we were not corresponding back and forth.
So ma'am, isn't it correct, ma'am, that you put this information in the letter because you didn't want to talk about it on the phone?
No, I probably didn't get time to talk to him on the phone.
And ma'am, it was important for you to convey to Mr. Durst that you were not being cooperative. Which means, is that correct?
No, it was important for me not to have any publicity. I just didn't want to be involved.
Well, ma'am, you've now conceded that you're biased in this case, so would you agree, ma'am, that you did not talk to me because you did not want to do anything that might in any way have an adverse consequence for Mr. Durst?
No, I didn't talk to you because I wouldn't talk to a district attorney unless I had representation from an attorney.
Ma'am, if you're being talked to as a witness in a case, why would you need representation?
I don't know.
So, ma'am, I'm simply asking you to concede that you didn't talk to me, ma'am, because you're on Mr. Durst's side.
No,
Ma'am, you just said a moment ago that you are not unbiased. You're not going to concede that you're actually on his side.
I don't think that's what unbiased means.
Well, I'm asking you, ma'am, as you sit here, do you think, ma'am, that you are on Mr. Durst's side?
No, I think if you have personally know someone, you're automatically going to be unbiased.
Hey, ma'am, let me ask you something. Today, how would you describe your relationship with Mr. Durst?
I haven't really seen him or talked to him. I can't remember the last time I talked to him.
Has he ever bought you anything?
No,
Has he ever talked about taking you to Europe?
we discussed going on a biking cruise several years ago.
And he was going to pay for that, correct, ma'am?
I don't know. We never went, so nobody paid for it.
What have you paid for during your relationship with him, if anything?
I don't know.
Fair to say, ma'am, you can't recall anything that you paid for. Is that correct?
Oh, no, that's not true.
Okay, so what is it you recall you paid for?
What do you want me to say? What is it that you want me to say?
Ma'am, you just told me that it's not true that you haven't paid for anything. So I said, okay, what did you pay for? Then you had about a 20-second pause where you appeared to be thinking, and I'm going to assume you couldn't think of anything you paid for. Is that correct, ma'am?
No, I probably took him to my yacht club.
So I'm going to ask you again, do you have a clear memory, ma'am, of ever paying for anything to Mr. Durst?
Yes.
And what is the trade for?
I don't know. Can't remember.
Okay. Ma'am, what's the opera that you and Mr. Durst went to?
I don't remember the name.
Has Mr. Durst ever talked about doing something significant for you financially?
Maybe, I don't know. I have never had any financial transactions with Mr. Durst.
Listen to my question, ma'am. I didn't ask you if you closed it yet. I asked you, have you talked with him about him doing something significant for you financially? Have you had that discussion?
Not a full discussion, no.
Well, what discussion have you had, ma'am?
I don't remember.
Let's see if this helps. Clip JC013, February 9, 2016, at 10:03 p.m.
And Your Honor, they remarked that is pupils 131 and 131A.
I reread your letter from a long time ago.
Which letter?
I want to do something significant for you.
Yeah.
Please want to.
Well, I thought you did.
With Debbie and her having the money, the problem is me, even before the Jinx, with all this negative stuff about me, a lot of condominiums didn't want me.
Right.
Does that refresh your memory, ma'am?
I hear the conversation, yes, but it doesn't make any sense, and there's no relevance to it.
Okay, ma'am, so here's my question. Mr. Durst says he reread a letter. This is a letter about you guys discussing what financially Mr. Durst is going to do for you, correct, ma'am?
Not exactly, no.
Not
There's no
exactly.
context
What
there.
part of it would be exactly and what part of it would be not?
There was no same discussion at that. That was in the prison. You're behind glass. You don't get to finish your discussion, and I did not have time to ask him what he was talking about.
Well, ma'am, your response was, he says, I've always wanted to, and you say, well, I thought you did.
Yes, but you're in an environment where you can only talk 5 words and they cut you off.
Ma'am, that's not true.
That is
So
true.
you're saying,
But you didn't
Yeah.
inquire about
Hello.
what it was.
ma'am, you're aware that Mr. Durst, his calls, he can speak for 15 minutes, correct?
But you can't hear part of the time. You're between glass on the microphone. So you do not have 15 minutes of conversation.
Ma'am, you would agree that when Mr. Durst was talking about doing something significant for you, he was talking about financially, isn't that correct?
No,
What was your understanding of that, ma'am?
I don't know. I didn't have time to talk to him.
Ma'am, so I'm asking you, you understand you're under oath, correct, ma'am?
Yeah.
Ma'am, listen to my question. Mr. Durst is saying, I want to do something significant for you, and I'm asking you, what did you think he meant by that?
Okay, I think he wanted to take a vacation.
Ma'am, he was talking about the fact that his money was tied up, correct?
I think so.
So, ma'am, isn't it true that that discussion, I want to do something significant for you, was Mr. Durst discussing doing something significant for you financially, correct, ma'am?
No, not necessarily.
So, ma'am, when you say not necessarily, ma'am, let me trouble this a little, ma'am. In your own words, what was the subject of that discussion where you're talking about Mr. Durst, he's saying he wants to do something significant? What did you understand that to mean?
I understood it to mean we had talked about a Viking cruise, so I understand it to be a vacation.
Ma'am, isn't it true that Mr. Durst has brought up the issue on more than just one call of giving you a gift and or providing for you financially?
No.
Now, has he ever asked you, ma'am, if you've given any thought to him making a contribution to your health and well-being?
No.
Never asked that. You
No.
sure?
I think he did not ask that.
JC 014-3416-1521.
Here, mark it as people number 2 and 132A. Okay, 132. Okay.
Have you given any thought to me making some kind of contribution to your health and well-being?
Yeah.
Shall we talk about that?
Yeah, that would be good. And how are you?
I'm in jail. I have less than much time to be in here.
Uh-huh.
They're just pushing the nighttime trays around.
Mm-hmm.
They'll get fed soon.
Yeah.
It's pretty darn good. It's making dinner pretty darn bad.
Yeah.
Well, there ain't much else.
Uh-huh. Okay.
The way it was going out, since Debbie has much more life left than you or I, being patient in essence belongs to you, which would be capable, when you die, which is usually long after Debbie and I die, that's making sense to me.
Okay, well, you don't know that I don't have that much life left in me.
Well, I hope you have lots and lots and lots of life left.
Yeah, we never know.
No, you never know.
We don't know.
But, right now, I'm expecting that Debbie has 15 more years than you or I.
Mm-hmm.
Make you alone. Expire, you expired, and Debbie would get the benefit.
I think I'm healthier than you.
Well, that's not saying much. I'm unhappy.
Yeah.
You're healthier than yes.
I'm sorry?
I only doubt that you're healthier than yes.
No, probably equal.
She's 16 years younger.
But that doesn't mean, it is okay. All right, but I don't understand what you're talking about alone.
What?
I don't understand what you're talking about alone.
No, I don't think it's a significant contribution to what we're talking about.
Uh-huh.
That's just a significant contribution. When you die, when you go to Debbie, I'm guessing will be here going after you are.
Okay.
And in the meantime, you would have the money, do whatever you wanted with it.
Okay, but if I spend it, how do I pay it back?
I didn't hear you when you said anything.
Okay, so if I spend the money and then I die and I'm dead, how do I pay money back that I spent when I'm dead?
Say, if you spent it,
Yes.
I mean, if you wasted it away, it's like the track and blew it or something.
No, I mean, I don't think I do that.
If you bought a house,
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, a house usually you don't spend. Okay.
bought a house, and presumably with your intelligence, you get a good buy.
Mm-hmm.
Worth at least as much. Then, that's when you bought it. Yeah, wouldn't need it anymore.
Right.
And was your estate, presumably sold it, Debbie would get the proceeds. She'd still be.
Okay, that is a living trust. That is called a living trust.
Say that again.
That is called a living trust.
I don't care what, yeah, call whatever it's called, I'm sure.
That's what it's called.
I'm sure it must be done all.
It is done all the time in families because it exempts people from inheritance taxes and all kinds of other things.
Wait, those are the lines I was thinking of when we were talking $1 million.
Yes.
Ma'am,
Yes.
that's a conversation of you and Mr. Durst talking about him potentially buying you a house, is that correct?
No. I am not accepting anything in this conversation, and I am not, he is doing the talking. I'm just listening.
Well, ma'am, so when you brought up the point that it didn't make sense to you about a loan, ma'am, that's because you thought this was going to be a gift, didn't you?
No. I wasn't interested in doing any transactions.
Oh, ma'am, can you please point out to me what you heard at any point where you said, Bob, listen, I don't want your money. Did that ever come up?
No, but I wasn't like taking an offer.
Ma'am, he also mentioned in this, he talked about the fact that you had had prior conversations about this, as we talked about before, correct? That's what Mr. Durst said.
I guess so. I don't remember that, but I have never had any financial transactions with Mr. Durst.
Right, as I said, ma'am, you haven't closed it, right?
I have no, there are none in the works. There are no financial transactions.
Ma'am, you agree that during this conversation, he talked about a significant contribution correct?
I think he was being nice.
Sounds real nice. Do you remember the number that he talked about?
No.
You don't know that. Man, you seem like you're pretty sophisticated financially, am I correct?
I don't understand the question.
You don't understand the question of, ma'am, are you sophisticated about financial matters?
I don't know what sophisticated is.
Well, ma'am, you were talking about inheritance taxes, living trusts, is that correct?
Yes, I have a living trust.
And ma'am, you said you didn't remember any number. When I say the term, oh, I don't know, $1 million, did that come up during your discussion?
Maybe, but that's not a lot of money.
$1 million is not a lot of money?
No.
Are there other men, ma'am, that you're out that have given you $1 million?
Yes,
How many?
my husband.
Any other ones that you weren't married to?
No.
So, ma'am, you didn't think it was significant that this man, Mr. Durst, was talking about giving you $1 million?
No.
And you said, ma'am, that you didn't really say anything about it, correct? That was just him, is that right?
Yes, I was not trying to make a transaction, no.
Ma'am, have you ever brought up with him the idea that, hey, you know what? He needs to remember about taking care of you financially. You ever brought that up to him?
No, I don't need to be taken care of financially.
Well, ma'am, are you sure you haven't brought that up?
Yes.
Okay. JC 015, 527, 16, at 0932.
133 and 133. Yes.
Hello? Yes, I am. Yeah, I know I missed you a couple times. I have been pretty busy, had fundraisers and all kinds of things going on. Well, you need to raise me some funds, remember? Yeah.
Ma'am, doesn't that sound like you telling Mr. Durst, hey, Bob, where's my cash?
No, that was a joke. I mean, that's what you said, you casually say things to people. I was doing fundraisers for the Federation of Women, and that's like a joke we say sometimes.
Ma'am, isn't it true that as you sit here, you identify Bob Durst as somebody that you're going to get some cash from?
No,
So you have no expectation, ma'am, of getting any money from Mr. Durst?
I have no expectation of getting any financial money or aid from Mr. Durst.
Do you have any hope that that might happen?
No,
So when you said before in the phone call, in essence, your words were, well, yeah, I was hoping something like that would happen. What did you mean?
I'm just kidding around with them.
You're kidding around. Ma'am, would you agree, though, that if you got on the witness stand and you said something that was in any way harmful to his case, ma'am, if you were to testify to that, you would agree, ma'am, that your belief would be, any money that was coming your way would be coming after that. Do you agree?
Absolutely not.
You can answer my question, ma'am. Can you say it again?
Please.
Okay, so I want you to assume that Bob Durst had told you something damaging to his case. And I'm just going to say, as an example, I want you to assume that Bob Durst had said to you at some point in time, I killed Susan Berman. Are you following me so far?
Mhm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Now, you would agree that as you sit up there right now, you would believe that if you repeated that in court, no money going forward for Bob. You would agree, right?
I am not anticipating any financial transactions with Bob Durst, and has nothing to do with this case or any answer here.
Okay, listen to my question again, ma'am. Listen very carefully. I have asked you previously if you are considering how your answers are affecting Mr. Durst, and you said no. Is that correct? Correct?
I've already forgotten.
Okay, now listen to my question. previously. I asked you, ma'am, are you considering with each question I ask how your answer might affect Mr. Durst in this case? And your answer was, no, I'm not thinking about that. Do you recall that?
No, but I guess I said that.
And would you agree that that is your state of mind, or are you saying, oh no, I am thinking about how these answers might affect him? Which is it?
I am not thinking, I am telling the truth.
Okay, so ma'am, given what you just said, if, ma'am, Mr. Durst had said something to you that was highly incriminating, such as, I killed Susan Berman, I'm just asking you, you would agree, ma'am, that your belief would be that if you repeated that in the courtroom, no way Mr. Durst is giving you any money after that. You would agree, correct? Okay. So, I'm asking you to assume that Mr. Durst had said something to you that was incriminating in the past about this case. I'm asking you, as you sit up here as a witness, do you agree, ma'am, that you are aware that were you to repeat that in court and say something damaging to Mr. Durst's case, that you would have the expectation that you would not be receiving any money from Mr. Durst?
No.
So you believe that no matter what you say in this case, it would have no effect on what Mr. Durst chooses to give you or not?
Yes.
And now you said that you have no expectation of any money from Mr. Durst. You have a hope, though, that you're going to get some, don't you?
I have absolutely no expectation for any financial deals with Mr. Durst, aid, or any money being involved in this
Now,
circumstance.
I'll let you pick up right here at 1:30.
All right, Ms. Clarke, you remain under oath, and you may continue with your examination.
Now, I want you to listen to my question very carefully. What I'm asking you is not whether or not you expect to get a large sum of money from Mr. Durst, not whether or not you have transacted to get a large amount of money from Mr. Durst, but do you in fact hope to get a large amount of money from Mr. Durst?
Absolutely not. I do not expect to get any money whatsoever.
And ma'am, that it would be your position that the conversations that we just played, where you were talking about gifts and where you expressed surprise about a loan, can you explain how those conversations make sense if you're not expecting any money, not hoping for any money?
Well, that was a surprise to me. I had never asked him for a loan, never was anticipating taking a loan, and I cannot read his mind. Maybe he just was wishing that he could do something nice for me. I do not know.
But, so now it's your position then that you never had a conversation with Mr. Durst prior to that call you heard where $1 million was mentioned, where he discussed with you giving you a significant amount of money?
No, I never did have a conversation.
Now, in listening to the call, you would agree that Mr. Durst is referencing a prior conversation you had about him giving you a significant amount of money, correct?
Yes, but I do not recall that, and I think he was confused.
And ma'am, you also, in listening to the call, you responded with surprise when he mentioned a loan. Your response was, in essence, what's this about a loan versus gift, correct?
Exactly. It was a complete surprise to me.
Ma'am, isn't it true that what was a surprise for you was not the significant financial presentation from Mr. Durst, but the fact that he was now describing it as a loan rather than a gift?
No.
Ma'am, is it your position then, are you saying that if Mr. Durst were to offer you a gift, a loan, or to do something significant for you financially, that you would turn that down?
I would turn it down.
And ma'am, how long have you had this thought in your mind you would turn it down? Is that a recent development, for instance, since today's testimony?
No, it's not a reason.
Well, thank you. I have no further questions.
Cross-examination.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Clarke.
Good afternoon.
My name is Donald Ray. I'm one of the lawyers representing Mr. DeGuerin.
Nice to meet you.
Sorry, it's under these circumstances. Just to follow up on what you're just being asked, this $1 million, you're clear, you didn't expect an offer of $1 million, is that correct?
That's correct.
You didn't ask for $1 million, is that correct?
No.
Is that correct? Meaning yes, you say no. Am I correct that you didn't ask for $1 million?
No, I did not ask for $1 million.
Thank you. Now, he was a friend of yours, correct? Still is a friend of yours, correct?
Correct.
And his talking about that was something that you really weren't interested in, correct?
Oh, no, I'd be interested, but I didn't ask for it, I didn't expect it, and I won't accept it.
Now, there's at one point where you said something like, well, I hope so, or something like that. Were you joking when you said that, basically?
What did I say? I hope so, too.
You know, so he was talking about, I wanted to do something for you, and you said something along the lines of...
Yes, absolutely. If anybody says, oh, I think I would like to do something nice for you, whether it's a girlfriend, a relative, or whatever, yes, that's very pleasant and you accept it.
Now, let me start off with something going back to counsel and ask you if between the time of your last testimony and your current testimony, whether you have spoken to any defense attorneys. Do you recall that question?
Yes.
All right, now, in fact, I understand what you're saying, but you may not recall. We rode down the elevator together with a whole bunch of people, and I think I said something to you. I'm sorry you're going through this. You may not even remember.
I don't remember, I'm sorry.
Now, you have talked sometimes about, I don't remember that, or I don't remember this. It is accurate, is it not, that you do not remember completely every word of every conversation you had?
No, I don't. I can't remember what I told somebody yesterday.
And is that just because of the way your memory acts?
No, I think that's normal. I haven't been told I have Alzheimer's.
And I take it you don't also remember every word in every document that you read, is that correct?
No, I do not.
And I gather also that your memory would be less together the older the memory goes back, correct?
True, yes.
Now, one of the things that you were asked about over the course of both today and the last appearance was whether you had various discussions with the defendant or any discussions with the defendant about his wife disappearing, the trial in Texas, and his friend being shot. Now, you recall being asked about that?
Yes.
Now, your testimony is that during the period of time that you knew Mr. Durst, you considered him a friend, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, would you think that it's possible that an individual could be uncomfortable discussing something like his wife disappearing?
Yes.
Would you think that, therefore, as a friend, it might not be a good idea to start asking about something that could make somebody uncomfortable?
Yes.
Is that one of the reasons why you, in fact, did not bring up any questions about the wife disappearing with Mr. Durst?
Probably yes.
Now, with regard to the issue of discussing a trial in which you've been tried for murder, do you think that bringing that up to somebody could make them uncomfortable?
Yes.
Even if they were acquitted and found not guilty, do you think that could make them uncomfortable?
Yes.
And is that part of the reason you didn't bring that up with Mr. Durst?
Yes.
And then we have a situation about a friend who's being shot and killed. Is that discussing that something you think could make somebody uncomfortable to discuss?
A friend that was being shot and
No,
killed.
would you think it would make somebody uncomfortable to discuss a friend who had been shot and killed?
To do.
In other words, if a friend of mine had been shot and killed, do you think it might upset me to have to talk about that?
If you were very sensitive to it at that time, yes.
Now, you've also testified to taking a number of phone calls from Mr. Durst while he was in custody, while he was in jail, correct?
Yes.
Now, is it accurate that you would not have been able to contact him on the phone by calling the jail?
Yes.
So that the only time that you'd be able to talk to him are the times that he would actually call you, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you take those calls from him because you were being friendly?
Yes,
Is that something you think you should do for a friend if they're got a problem and they call you to talk to them?
yes,
And is that part of the reason that you took the calls from Mr. Durst?
yes,
Now, you also indicated you visited him one time at the jail somewhere, correct?
I did,
And
yes.
is that for the same reason, trying to be a friend?
Yes.
Do you think there's anything wrong with visiting somebody in jail?
No, actually, I'm a friend of Mormon, and the Mormons believe in visiting people who are incarcerated and trying to. They just believe that's the right religious thing to do.
And is it something that you think a person should do to try to make a friend feel better if you've got a problem going on? If they can do it by visiting them?
Yes,
Now, you also talked about the fact that you visited Mr. Durst when he was in Texas at one point, correct?
yes,
And I thought that you had said, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you thought that at or about that time he'd been in the hospital, is that correct?
yes, he had been in the hospital, he had been ill, probably could not travel, was not getting around well. So yes, it was easier for me to visit Texas because he could not travel.
Now, was that something you did as a friend, or visit a friend who'd been sick?
Of course, yes,
Now, when you went down there, Mr. Durst put you up in a big fancy hotel, is that right?
no,
He had you stay at his place, is that correct?
yes,
Do you think there's anything wrong with staying at his place?
no, I do not.
Now, it is clear to you, I think you said it many times, if not correct me, that your relationship with Mr. Durst was friendship, not romantic, is that correct?
Yes, it was friendship.
Now, jumping back to the last time that you were here, there were some telephone calls regarding a package, is what it was called, that you had sent to Mr. Durst, and I believe you indicated that it contained some news clippings, something along those lines.
Yes, I didn't recognize it as a package. It was an 8.5 by 11 large yellow envelope, which I would consider a letter.
Now, there was some conversation that you had with Durst about that thing that you sent, and I gather that there was some question that you had as to whether the jail might consider it a package, not let him have it. Is that correct?
Well, not that they would consider it a package. I don't know. I didn't know the exact rules that I could send in newspaper articles to the
And so,
jail.
when you were talking to Mr. Durst about this situation, was it to find out what you could and could not do from him?
No, I just wanted to let him know I sent it, but I didn't know if he would receive it.
Okay, so that he would be on notice that it was coming,
Yes.
and then later, if it didn't come, you'd be able to ask him about it, basically.
Yes, I had my doubts. I didn't anticipate what they were doing.
Now, you've also told us that on a number of occasions, as you mentioned, you spoke to Mr. Durst while he was in custody, correct?
Correct?
And were you on notice that those calls were being recorded?
Yes, I understand the report.
And at the time that they happened, you understood that they were recording?
I did understand it.
Did you think you were doing something wrong by talking to a friend over the telephone and the friend was in jail?
No,
Did you think that that would be helping a friend to have give him some support from the outside?
yes,
Is that why you took the phone call?
yes.
You had some conversation, some testimony that you gave regarding the Jinx. Now, I understand that you saw some of the Jinx, maybe not all of the Jinx, and that kind of thing. But I'd like to focus on the period of time after the last episode, which was actually a day or so after Mr. Durst was arrested, and conversations that you may have had regarding the Jinx after he was in custody in New Orleans. Now, there was a conversation that the district attorney played for you, in which the defendant said something to the effect of, he messed up cooperating with the filmmakers. Do you recall that conversation, Jack?
Yes,
From what you know about the Jinx and how the Jinx portrayed Mr. Durst, did you think that the Jinx was trying to make him look good or bad?
of course they were trying to make it look bad.
And there was a statement in one of the conversations where Mr. Durst said something about having a problem after the 5th episode, I think is what it was called. Do you remember something about that?
Yes,
Now, from your understanding, is it your understanding that Jinx was seen by millions of people?
Yes,
And when the defendant said something like he had created a problem for himself by working with the movie people, did you agree or disagree with that based upon the publicity that you saw was coming out against him regarding it?
I agree.
I think you indicated in part that you had an opinion as to whether or not news reporters or reporters such as the ones who make the Jinx would make stuff up. Do you have any opinion as to whether they do that?
Yes, I think Hollywood always makes stuff up to make it more interesting.
I think on a couple of means so they'd be able to sell it.
Otherwise it'd be boring and you wouldn't go see it.
I think a couple of times, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you referred to the Jinx a couple of times as a movie. Is that correct?
Yes, but I guess it was a TV series.
Okay. When you referred to it as a movie, does that imply anything with regard to the accuracy of the material portrayal?
Oh yeah, it's a movie, it's Hollywood.
Yeah, that was your view.
That's my view, yes.
Now, you spoke at some point about, or you spoke in one of the recordings at some point about, I think the phrase you used was, they're not going to get me on anything, which is, when they're talking about the Altmans, and you were saying that about, they're not going to get you on any show, is what you explained to the prosecutors, I understand. Do you have that in mind?
Yes, I don't like publicity. I would not want to be on TV.
Okay. And I take it that that is the position that you had at the time that the Jinx came out, and the time that Mr. Durst was in custody, that you didn't know publicity. Is that right?
Yes, I would never want it for any other reason either.
And when you said that you would go on the shows, is that the reason for it, the publicity? Or
Of
something?
course, I don't want to be on TV.
In your jail conversations with the defendants, you indicated that you thought that you knew that they were recorded. You're asked questions about why didn't you ask about the case? Did you feel that there could be some problem with that problem? Do you feel that it would be inappropriate for you to be asking the defendant about the case?
I don't think I asked him anything that wasn't of public knowledge.
And was part of that having to do with the fact that it was a charge, or what was it to do with? In other words, that he was being charged with something, or why is it you didn't ask him anything more particular?
Because it's recorded.
Okay. And you thought that it would be inappropriate, is that what you're saying?
It's inappropriate, yes.
Would your reasons for talking to him then be more to try to get information from him, or to just be there as a friend to support him?
I think people that are incarcerated need support, and they do need friends.
You know what?
They do need friends and support and family.
So they have threats?
Support.
I have nothing close to that.
Redirect.
Now, you were just asked a moment ago, and you described Bob Durst offering to give you discussing the number of $1 million as a pleasant, nice thing for somebody to do. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, how many friends have you had? Any friends that have ever discussed giving you $1 million?
None that I can think of.
Except for Mr. Durst, right?
Okay.
So now, when you said before you claimed to have no memory of this conversation where Mr. Durst talked about giving you $1 million, is it your testimony, ma'am, that you just forgot that, or that that was just an insignificant?
It was not, it isn't, I forgot, I partially forgot, and I wasn't sure how the discussion went.
Well, ma'am,
You're the one who was putting the words in my mouth. I did not say it.
so ma'am, you didn't hear that conversation. Ma'am, I played you a clip of that jail call between you and Mr. Durst where the $1 million came up. Was I a part of that call?
I don't know.
You don't know if I was a part of your jail call to Bob Durst that you listened to?
No.
So ma'am, how on earth could I have put words into your mouth or Mr. Durst's mouth on a phone call that I was not a part of?
You're badgering me.
I got you during the phone call?
No, you're badgering me now.
Well, so ma'am, let's get back to my questions. What I'm asking you is, as you sit here, you are telling me on the court that you know what? I have no memory whatsoever of Bob Durst talking about giving me $1 million.
He was not talking about giving me $1 million.
Well, ma'am, looks like he switched it. Now he's talking about giving you a loan and you didn't like it, correct?
I did not request him to do that, and I didn't like it, and that's that.
So, ma'am, when Bob said, anyway, those are the lines I was thinking of, we're talking $1 million, and you respond, yes. Do you recall that?
I was responding yes to his conversation, but I knew what he was saying. I was not agreeing.
Now, isn't it true that the first time you have ever mentioned in Bob Durst's presence or over the phone that you are not interested in Bob Durst's money is today in court?
No,
When did you also bring that up previously with Mr. Durst or with anybody else?
I probably did, but I cannot give you the exact dates, times from memory. This is years and years and years.
Well, now, if I told you that I've listened to every call that you've made and you never did you in any way say to Mr. Durst, I don't want your money, does that sound consistent or inconsistent with your memory?
It sounds inconsistent and it sounds stupid.
So what you're saying is your belief, ma'am, is that in those calls, you would have said to Mr. Durst at a certain point in time, Bob, I don't want your money. Is that what you're saying, ma'am?
There would be no point in that. There was no, that's ridiculous.
Ma'am, there'd be no point in that if you wanted the money. Would you agree?
No,
Ma'am, you just testified a moment ago that you did not want to make Mr. Durst uncomfortable by asking him details about his wife's disappearance where he was a suspect, his best friend's murder where he was a suspect, and the killing and dismemberment of Morris Black, which he admitted to doing. Is that your testimony?
yes,
Ma'am, you were, at this point in time, you were, if not dating Mr. Durst, you were spending time with him alone overnight at his homes in Los Angeles and Houston. Is that correct?
false.
False. Well, tell me about it's false, ma'am.
I never stayed overnight at his home in Los Angeles.
Have you been over to his house in Los Angeles, ma'am?
Yes,
Have you been alone with him on more than one occasion at his home in Los Angeles?
yes,
Have you flown down to Houston and stayed with him for several days at
3
his
days.
residence? I'm sorry?
3 days in Houston.
So ma'am, my question is, you indicated you are uncomfortable bringing this up to him. Don't you think, ma'am, that any prudent woman who's going to be spending time alone with somebody would want to get some answers as to the circumstances of, hey, did you kill your wife? Did you murder your best friend? And about that whole killing and dismembering the guy across the hallway, what's the story with that? Isn't that something, ma'am, that you believe that you would have wanted to know about?
No,
Well, ma'am, how did you know if you came down to Houston, you weren't going to end up in Galveston Bay, maybe in pieces?
I had no fear of that. I completely trusted him.
And ma'am, and you were, fair to say, ma'am, in going down there, you were making kind of a financial calculation. You were looking at the risk of spending time with Mr. Durst versus the reward of how much money you might be able to get out of him, correct?
No, false.
You testified a moment ago, you were asked questions about the Jinx, is that right?
Right.
And you were asked questions about what you had seen, is that correct?
Correct.
And ma'am, you mentioned, Mr. Ray just asked you on cross-examination about specifically episode 5 and your conversation with Bob Durst, where he said to you that he thought he might have a problem after episode 4, but he knew he had a problem after episode 5. Do you recall that?
I think so, not really.
Ma'am, do you recall what the key moment was in episode 5 regarding Mr. Durst?
No.
Mark is equals 134. This is going to be, this is from the Jinx itself, episode 5. Ma'am, do you think it would help your recollection to see part of episode 5, the program that you said you watched, where Mr. Durst discussed the Beverly Hills letter you don't remember?
No.
In addition to equals 134 and 134A.
Yeah.
Sorry, explain this?
Yeah, well, that is.
All right, I want to ask you about this address.
Susie.
Well, yeah, you can read me the letter.
Now and again I think about old times. Gee, good luck, Bobby. Susie. Well, what about the address?
Well, first I was curious about this office. Was your own office that you had for a period of time?
Yeah, when I left the family business, I moved my office downtown.
Do you remember writing this to Susan?
No, not at all. I left the family business in 94, 95. But Susie, now and again, I think about old times. Good luck, Bobby. I don't know what Susie was doing. She must have come out with a new something or other. Whatever she had published or whatever in 94, 95, I have no idea what that's about.
I want to show you the envelope that letter came in. Would you read me the address on this envelope?
Robert Durst, 42467 Wall Street, New York, 10005.
And who you sent it to?
Susan Berman, 1527 Benedict Canyon, Beverly Hills, California. Beverly spelled wrong, California, 90210. Which is, you know, the zip code that you want in Beverly Hills, but you just didn't want Susie's neighborhood.
So obviously I want to ask you about the cadaver note, the famous cadaver note. Could you read me the spelling of Beverly Hills?
1527 Benedict Canyon, cadaver. Same misspelling.
So Beverly spelled the same way on this and the same way on this.
Same misspelling.
What does that say to you?
I mean, the writing looks similar and the spelling is the same, so I can see the conclusion that Oxford drew. Or the writing exemplar person would conclude they were both written by the same person.
And I think this is a comparison of the two, right? Which is,
Very similar.
so I guess the question is, did you write the cadaver note?
No, I didn't write the cadaver note.
So you wrote this, but you didn't write this.
Definitely wrote this, but I definitely did not write that.
I guess I'm searching for a way, among other things, to understand how.
Two people could misspell Beverly.
I'm searching for a way to figure out how you didn't write the cadaver note, because it's so similar.
What I see as a similarity is really the misspelling in the Beverly. Other than that, the block letters are block letters. I mean, it's almost comparing what was typed here to what was typed on the other one. It's got to be a block letter. How else would you write a block letter than that? I mean, it's almost like a typed thing. It's going to look two typed things the same.
So you wrote one of these, but you didn't write the other one.
I wrote this one, I did not write the cadaver.
And can you tell me which one you didn't write?
I saw it several years ago.
Now, are you saying that you forgot that Bob Durst on national television, quote Mr. Ray, is seen looking at the cadaver note and the letter he admitted he wrote and saying, I can't tell the two apart? You forgot that?
I did forget that, but I do see it now.
And ma'am, in fact, when Mr. Durst told you during your phone call that you asked him, ma'am, isn't that correct? You're the one who said, hey, when did you know you had a problem? Remember he asked you about that last time?
Yes.
So ma'am, you asked him when you had a problem. Wasn't that about his case?
It was about his case.
So ma'am, it's interesting. You didn't seem to have any issue asking Mr. Durst when he thought he had a problem, but yet you don't want to ask him, hey, by the way, that missing wife, she ever come up? Hey, that best friend who got murdered, did they ever solve that one? Hey, can you explain why you killed and dismembered the neighbor? But you didn't ask that.
I asked him when he thought he had a problem because that's when he tried to run away.
So, ma'am, you knew when you were asking the question, you had seen episode 5, and you knew that the problem he was referring to, ma'am, correct, you believe, were the similarity of those two letters in his handwriting, correct?
No, I was under the impression the problem was that he realized he was going to be indicted, or whatever you call this, and that was his problem.
Ma'am, how did you, where exactly did it discuss on the Jinx Bob Durst being indicted?
It did, but when I saw the Jinx, I came home, it wasn't fresh, it was old, he had already been arrested, and that's what I was asking him, like, when did you feel you need to run or had a problem? That is what I was referring to.
And my question, ma'am, is when he told you that he knew he had a problem after episode 5, you knew, ma'am, that he was referring to the issue with his handwriting, correct?
He didn't say that, anything about his handwriting.
Well, ma'am, when he mentioned he knew he had a problem after episode 5, what did you think he meant?
I was asking, you're getting me all confused. Okay, I didn't see the Jinx for a while. He was already arrested. I was out of the country. So I was asking him when he knew after episode, whatever it is, 5, that he had to leave the country or try to leave the country.
Ma'am, he told you he knew he had a problem. Leaving the country would be a problem. That would be potentially a solution. What did you take when he said, I knew I had a problem after episode 5? What did you take that to mean?
I didn't know what the exact problem was.
Well, ma'am, if you didn't know what the exact problem was, then how come you didn't ask him to clarify?
I don't know.
Ma'am, isn't it true you knew what the exact problem was? Because
No,
you-
I did not. I knew he had to leave the country, was trying to get out. I was somewhere else when episode 5. When I found out he left the country, I hadn't even seen episode 5.
Ma'am, that's not what I'm asking you. By the time you're speaking to him, you are well aware of the similarity of these two notes, correct, ma'am?
I don't understand that. No, I don't.
Let me break it down for you. You spoke to him. This call was from July of 2000 and go back here. It's from 2015 after his arrest. I don't have the date in front of me of the call we're referring to. But at that point in time, ma'am, you are asking him when did he know that he had a problem. And he again is telling you, I thought I might have one after episode 4. I knew I had one after episode 5. So ma'am, at that point in time, is it your testimony that you did not know and did not remember anything about this whole handwriting issue during this call? You know, memory.
And that did not occur to me during this call. No, that was not it. I was just, it occurred to me that the whole series was the problem.
But ma'am, the series was the problem. Would you agree, ma'am, that that series contained Bob Durst saying a lot of things that appeared to be very damaging?
Yes.
And ma'am, you were aware of that, correct?
Well, yes,
It stopped at 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 38 seconds.
Very well. We're almost done with this part. We'll we'll conclude it, I believe, at 1:30. Yes? And ladies and gentlemen, do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. You're excused until 1:30.